welcome to another edition of the African Transformation Spotlight, brought to you by the African Center for Economic Transformation. We are an African-led, African-driven economic policy institute based in Ghana, working across the whole of the continent and connected to the world. Today, we're having a conversation with one of our colleagues here at ACET. George Boateng is Senior Policy Analyst here, and he's working on our regional integration program. George has extensive experience in development economics with a particular focus on agriculture, food security, and trade across Africa. He has been very instrumental in driving ACET's regional integration program, which aims to enhance regional collaboration and economic transformation across the continent. So today we're going to be discussing some of the significant achievements of this program, the regional integration program, the challenges that we faced along the way, and what is next for this very crucial initiative. And then we'll also explore how George's expertise and his work, including what he's done in countries like Liberia, continues to shape and advance ACET's mission in Africa. Welcome to the African Transformation Spotlight, George.
Thank you very much, Belinda.
Good to have you. So I think we'll delve straight into the conversation for today. You've been working on regional integration within ACET for a while. Can you give us an overview of the regional integration program and its significance in the broader context of Africa's economic transformation?
Sure. So the regional integration program was modeled on the foundations of ACET's third transformation report, titled Integrating to Transform. Basically, what this program says to do is that we are trying to advance regional integration or deepen the integration project through regional public goods or through the delivery of regional public goods. Now, if you cast your mind back a bit, 5 years ago, Africa made a giant leap by launching the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. This is huge. This agreement gives Africa a very large market of 1.3 billion people across 55 African countries. But what we are saying is that this is not enough. More progress is needed on economic transformation. And that is where regional public goods comes into play. So basically, delivering regional public goods is not an easy task. It involves a lot of coordination across multiple groups, from the regional level to the local level or to the national level. And this sometimes can bring about political challenges. The idea is that we want you to start thinking regionally whilst you act local in trying to advance regional public goods. And the way we go about this is to solve the challenges that comes with delivering these public goods. It's basically by working across, as I said, multiple stakeholders. And one of the key issues is that, and in one breath, we work with national governments, try to help them to solve national problems that require regional solutions. So let me give you an example. In 2023, we worked with the Liberian government, and we were supported by the US aid to help them to make sense of the agricultural sector. The Liberian government is keen on reducing poverty in the country, and also they are keen on economic transformation. And they view cocoa as a major crop that can help them in this transformation agenda. So, in our analysis of the cocoa sector, we came up with we saw one insightful thing in the cocoa industry, that is smuggling. And smuggling, of course, is a national issue, but it requires a cross-border collaboration or a regional solution. And one of the solutions we proposed to them was to work with countries to stop smuggling across their borders. And this is already happening. It's not novel. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are working together to set the prices of cocoa in order to stop smuggling across the borders. Yeah. So this is something that they can build on because it's already really happening. So beyond working with governments to solve national issues that require regional solutions, the program further goes further to now work with regional and continental bodies that are really the vehicles that are delivering these regional public goods. For instance, the After Secretariat is one of those regional bodies, and so on and so forth. So basically, what I'm trying to say, Belinda, the point I'm driving is that this program is positioned to help Africa deliver regional public goods beyond the AfCFTA agreement that has been signed. And that is the trust of this program.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I think you've touched on bits of my next question, which is the challenges. I mean, we all know that working with different stakeholders across different countries can be challenging. So throughout this process, what have been some of the major challenges that you've seen in aligning national policies with regional and continental protocols? Because a lot of the time we see that our national governments sign on to many protocols that are supposed to enhance, economic transformation. But at the end of the day, we don't really see much happening. So what is the challenge there, in areas like labor mobility, for instance, in infrastructure, digital economy? Is your work addressing some of these challenges?
Well, a very important question, Belinda, and thank you for asking. Yeah. After this huge launch of the African Continental Free Trade Area, now the issue is that countries have to come back to their home and then align their national policies with the continental protocols. Yeah. And there are significant challenges there. Allow me to deal with three of them. So the first one that's a low-hanging fruit for most African countries is that we have observed that there is very little coordination across countries in terms of management of borders. Border officers in most of these institutions in countries having a lot of difficulty because they don't have the right infrastructure to make sure that goods and services flow freely across the borders. When I talk of infrastructure, I mean the soft and hard infrastructure. Soft infrastructure in terms of ICT, in terms of the processes, in terms of the procedures and the frameworks. And the hard infrastructure, I'm looking at road networks and also the ports. So there's a need for countries to invest in infrastructure. And this is a low-hanging fruit. So that border officers can talk to each other across different African countries to enable the free movement of goods and services. Yeah. And this is critical to realize the full impact of the AFTA. A second critical issue borders on the labor market. Across African countries, there's a lot of there are systems where something we call the labor market information systems. And most of these systems are not really working in most of African countries. There are some African countries that have not even got a labor market information system. What this labor market information system does is that it gives insights on job opportunities and the skills needed by one country so that skilled labor can move from another country into that country, and basically to boost productivity across the continent. But this is basically missing. Most African countries do not have a functioning labor market information system, and those who have it, it's not properly configuration. So there are issues with that system, and more has to be done to improve that system to make sure that skills move to where it's needed on the African continent. It's a very critical issue. I can talk about a country like Rwanda, who is doing very well in trying to improve their labor market information system, as well as Kenya, also doing some fantastic work in this area. The third challenge, which for me is huge. I wouldn't say the toughest one, but it's very huge. It has to deal with issues on the African Union's Free Movement of Persons Protocol. Now, this protocol is meant to facilitate the movement of people across borders in Africa, and also investment as well. But when you look at it critically, since it was launched, only 4 African countries have been able to ratify this agreement. So Africans are not moving freely. You need a lot of visas before you can visit African countries. Investors are having problems moving from one country to the other. So these are very huge challenges. I mean, we have mentioned in some of our reports that the AU needs to go back to that protocol, look at the implementation plan, and revise it. Perhaps a step-by-step approach to implementation can help move this protocol forward. Yeah. Because this protocol will be critical for the realization of the AFCFTA and the benefits that it can bring to African countries.
Yeah. Let me take you back briefly to the issue of labor market information systems. You mentioned that countries like Rwanda, Kenya are doing well in putting that together. Are there lessons there for other countries that are lagging to learn? How can they improve these systems?
Yeah. Ample lessons can be drawn from these countries. As I said, this program is basically looking at how countries can collaborate, how countries can learn from each other, how countries can go into agreement to solve national issues that require regional solutions. The labor market information system is one of such issues, because if Kenya has got a functional labor market information system, and yet Tanzania hasn't got one, it means that they are not solving the problem. Yeah. It means that labor cannot move. So this is also a problem that requires regional solutions. One thing that can happen is that the regional economic communities can work together, maybe in the EAC, that's the East African community. Yeah. They can work together to build a functional regional labor market information system. Partners in ECOWAS can work together to build a functional regional labor market information system. And when these are successful, they can build on it and have a continent-wide approach to labor mobility.
All right, George. So let's talk a bit about trade, again, back to the AFCFTA. Considering how the current landscape of regional integration or regional trade in Africa looks like, what do you see as the key opportunities and challenges for African countries to effectively implement the AFCFTA protocols, particularly in terms of boosting trade and then also investments across the continent?
Yeah, there are huge opportunities, but there are also challenges. I'll elaborate a bit on the challenges. First of all, there's a problem of infrastructure on the continent. This encompasses hard infrastructure such as ports and roads, and also soft infrastructure such as ICT, processes and institutional frameworks. The African Development Bank has mentioned that Africa has a funding gap of $100 billion annually in order to bridge the infrastructure gap. This is quite a huge issue, and this is something that Africa needs to work on if it's going to take full advantage of the AFCFTA. People have advanced a lot of financing options to help Africans bridge this financing gap. PPPs are one of the ways that people have mentioned. Blended financing and also sustainable bonds or green bonds can help us bridge this financing gap. Another critical issue, we all know that the AFCA aims to reduce tariffs gradually. But there's a critical issue here, that of non-tariff barriers. Non-tariff barriers in trade can, as a result of technical issues or technical barriers to trade. It could also be from pre-inspections of shipments. It could also come from protectionist measures from countries and also other formalities that increase the cost of trade for firms or businesses. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development has mentioned that non-tariff barriers are 3 times more restrictive than traditional customs taxes. This is huge. And there's a need for African countries to work together to reduce these non-tariff barriers. If we are able to reduce or remove non-tariff barriers from trade, there's a possibility that we could add $20 billion to the GDP of African countries. There's also a possibility that we could increase trade, or we could increase GDP of African countries by 2% if we could add or combine it with trade facilitation measures. So these two, there are a lot of challenges, but these two for me are something that we should look at in the immediate term. As I said, there are huge opportunities out there. A lot of them. One of them that is very key. Let's look at it this way. So we created a very huge market of 1.3 billion people across 55 countries. So that's a huge market. But so what? You have a market. What is critical is that we need to build efficient market linkages to these markets. We need to strengthen these market linkages. And how do we do that? We can only do that when we develop regional value chains, or we participate actively in regional value chains. So regional value chains will be key in realizing the benefits of the AfCFTA. Take, for instance, the cotton regional value chain. The African Development Bank has mentioned that it can create around 600% value addition across the cotton value chain if we are really focused on building these regional value chains around it. This value could be captured across from production to knitting, to weaving, anything, even in the fashion industry. When we create these value chains, a value chain around the cotton industry, instead of sending our cotton in this raw form to Europe and other countries, we can boost the employment and also boost the industrialization drive across the continent. Another value chain that we have to look at critically is the battery and electronic vehicle value chain. How do we create an African regional battery and EV value chain around this very critical issue? We all know that Africa has an abundance of critical minerals. And when I say critical minerals, these are minerals that have not got any substitute. And most of it is found in the African continent. We look at countries like the DRC, countries like South Africa, even Ghana, Rwanda, Zambia. These countries have got abundance of critical minerals just waiting to be explored. If you look at it carefully, DRC have got about 70% of the world's cobalt. This is huge. And so the question remains, what is the plan for Africans around critical minerals? I know that the US, the European Union, and also China have plans for Africa's critical minerals. What is Africa's plan for its minerals? Now, let me go back and give you a bigger picture. Now, in 2023, Bloomberg announced that by 2050, the value around the battery and EV value chain could balloon to around $57 trillion. This is huge. Yeah. So the question still remains, what is the plan for critical minerals by African countries? What I believe is that if African countries can strategically plan around critical minerals and have a clear plan and a vision for it, we can capture most of this $57 trillion market before the end of the second quarter of the 21st century.
Wow, that's a hopeful note. As we round off, let's look at the future of Africa's economic transformation. How do you envision the role of regional cooperation and domestication of the AFCFTA protocols in shaping the economic landscapes, of African countries? So countries like Ghana, like Kenya, like Rwanda, as we go forward.
And I always say this, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is a game changer, but it's a framework. We need to make it work. And we need to go beyond it. And how do we do that? We can only do that if we can collaborate in terms of regional collaboration to move policy shifts across the continent. And we use that public goods to deliver. We use the delivery of public goods as a vehicle for economic transformation. The AFTA is going to be fully implemented by 2035. So basically that is the next quarter of the century. If we miss this boat, if Africans miss this boat, by the third quarter of the century, the future will not look so bright for Africa. But I'm an optimist. And honestly, I'm very optimistic about what we can do through regional collaboration to go beyond the AFCFTA and to move Africa towards the path of economic transformation.
And on that very optimistic note, we will bring to an end this episode of the African Transformation Spotlight. We have been speaking to George Boateng, who is a senior policy analyst here at ACET. George, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and we hope to talk to you soon. I know that you have many more things that we can chat about and that our viewers and will be interested in hearing. So we'll talk to you again. Thank you again for coming on the Spotlight.
Thank you.
My name is Belinda Ayamgha. I'm Communications Manager here at ACET, and I've been your host for this edition of the African Transformation Spotlight. See you again next time.